Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of JTB Sports. I'm joined here by my friends Brett and Jay.
Yo.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Today's episode, we are going to be covering or recapping the preseason. But first, how about we get to know you guys a little bit. Let's start with our favorite teams. I think with me, it's pretty obvious that I'm a diehard Cincinnati Bengals fan, which is basically equivalent to being a masochist. But, you guys?
Yeah, I mean, you can argue the same thing for us Vikings fans. I myself am a Minnesota Vikings fan. It's not a specific Vikings cap, but it's a Minnesota football cap. I got a Minnesota Twins jersey on, so I'm just a huge Minnesota sports fan.
Me as well. Cursed to be a Vikings fan, and it's just pure pain pretty much 24/7. Because
Yeah,
they're the type of team that makes you think they're going to be good, and then they always disappoint. So, and we get excited every single year. Um, this year is going to be no different. So yeah,
See, you guys talk about pain so much. At least you've seen your team win a playoff game in your lifetime. Can't say I've seen that. Anyway,
oh man.
it's almost poetic that the first game of the season, the first week of the season, the Vikings play at the Bengals.
yeah, I'm very excited for that matchup. Joe Burrow, that high flying offense, a lot of talent on that team. Same goes for the Vikings, a lot of players coming back from injury, and I think it'll be a very interesting game. Hopefully, the Vikings can come out on top.
You know,
Yeah, absolutely. On paper, the Vikings should win, but they're pretty infamous for losing to teams that they shouldn't to. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm gonna predict the Bengals win just to ensure that I cannot be disappointed.
see, I have a feeling that a couple years ago, the Bengals' very first game of the season was against the Baltimore Ravens at home. This was back in 2017, and I was super optimistic. And they came out and got their asses kicked. They got shut out 20-0 by a Joe Flacco led offense. And Andy Dumpton threw 4 picks. I don't know why, but I get a feeling that this first game is going to be exactly like that. Joe Burrow is going to look rusty and play like shit, and Jamar Chase is going to drop like 4 or 5 passes because that's the only thing he's good at doing right now.
Yeah, and I
Anyway,
mean, I've mentioned this to you before, but at least the guy you wanted has been sucking as well, Sewell.
Penei Sewell, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess it was a lose-lose after all. Figures. Anyway, are there any moments over the preseason that really stood out to you guys? Like, say, what did you guys think of Trevor Lawrence in the brief play that he had?
I think he looked pretty decent. Urban Meyer, new regime in Jacksonville. Never coached in the NFL before, so he's gonna probably have some growing pains here in the NFL. But as far as Lawrence's play goes, I think he performed about as well as you could expect. A number one overall pick. Um, highly regarded quarterback prospect, probably the best prospect since Andrew Luck in the 2012 draft. So I think he is as advertised, and he should be a very good quarterback in this league.
Yeah,
Jay?
absolutely. He throws the ball well downfield like we thought. He's a big, tough quarterback. That might actually be a downside because he's going to have to be really careful. He's not going to be able to do quite as many scrambles as he could in college because, that can get you hurt in the NFL. And I guess that's a pretty general statement for most rookie QBs, but yeah, still applies to Trevor Lawrence, even though he's this big, tough guy. Um, yeah, I think he's going to be really good.
So I'm gonna say he did look good in Week 3 against the Cowboys, but he was playing the Cowboys defense, so it's not like that was a very difficult challenge. The first 2 weeks though, especially his brief play in Week 1 of the preseason against the Browns, I think the entire team looked terrible. Like I don't know what it was, but I think it was his very first play, his very first snap in the preseason. He got killed because his entire offensive line, like other than the center, failed him. So I'm really hoping we don't get another Joe Burrow again. Thanks, Zac Taylor. But it would be a shame to see another first overall pick go down again without finishing the rookie season. Anyway, was there anything, any rookies for your guys' team that really shined, you thought?
I mean, personally, I'm a big Kellen Mond fan right off the bat. Our third round QB pick. I know a lot of Vikings fans, including myself, are hoping he can be Kirk Cousins' successor. And just from what we've seen so far, I mean, he looks pretty good. Obviously, he made some rookie mistakes, but they're just that, rookie mistakes. And yeah, he seems to be a good dual threat. And yeah, I'm just excited. I think he fits the profile of what a modern NFL quarterback looks like. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would say the same as well. Kellen Mond, probably the most exciting draft pick the Vikings had, um, outside of their first round pick, which they got addressed the O-line finally in the first round. But we didn't see Christian Darrisaw, our first round pick, play due to injury. But I did like what I saw from Kellen Mond. I think, like Jay said, he fits the profile of a modern NFL quarterback. Hopefully, he can be Kirk Cousins' successor. He didn't unfortunately play too much in training camp because he was on the COVID list, I believe. But when the preseason, I thought he looked good. Did make some mistakes, threw an interception or two, lost a fumble, but that's to be expected with the growing pains in the NFL. So, but yeah, I think Kellen Mond looked was the most fascinating rookie as far as the Vikings go.
Well, usually in the preseason and training camp before it is when you're optimistic, and when the regular season hits is when you start to lose that optimism. Well, I can say I didn't even get that training camp / preseason optimism because none of Cincinnati's top picks did anything of note. In fact, actually, I take that back. They did. They were so bad that they had spotlight on them for being so crappy. Well, let's start with the guy we shouldn't have taken, Jamar Chase. The dude can't catch a bubble screen. He had 4 or 5 targets and 4 drops. His only reception was a bubble screen, but everything after that went right through his goddamn hands. Then the offensive lineman we did draft, Jackson Carman from Clemson, apparently was so bad that he was on the 3rd or 4th team during the preseason games. So obviously that's not a great sign. And then the one person who did look promising, who got a sack on Tom Brady in the first preseason game, Joseph Osai, the defensive end out of Texas, tears his meniscus and is out for the season because, of course. Now, I should note that our 5th round pick, Evan McPherson, the kicker out of Florida, has actually looked pretty good. And he did win the starting job over Austin Seibert because Austin Seibert was cut yesterday in final cuts. So as of now, the rookie Evan McPherson is going to be our starting kicker. Just so he doesn't end up like Daniel Carlson.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
The curse of the Vikings kickers.
So I know it's the preseason and these games don't really matter. They're just really to show who you want and who you're going to cut. But I still can't help but feel disappointed because Cincinnati, coming into the last week of the preseason, was hosting Miami. Joe Burrow only played like a series, and he only threw one pass attempt, which was to that bonehead Jamar Chase, and as you could probably predict, he dropped it. So, late in the game, there's about 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and Cincinnati had a 12-point lead. And they proceeded to blow said 12-point lead by giving Miami 15 unanswered points. And what makes this extra painful was the fact that Miami had the ball at like Cincinnati's 40 or 45 with a minute and a half left. The quarterback got sacked on third down, so it was like 4th and 15. Literally all they had to do, all Cincinnati, I know it's like the third, fourth team defense, but literally all they had to do was play Prevent D. Prevent D is the most fucking basic type of coverage you can possibly think of. It's literally get back and do not let them catch the ball in the end zone. That's all they had to do. But no, instead they let the third string quarterback, somebody nobody's ever fucking heard of, throw a bomb, Hail Mary bomb, and give up a touchdown. Just like that. I'm like, wow, nothing fucking changes, does it? I should also mention that that third string quarterback for the Dolphins had played the entire game, that entire Week 3 preseason game. And I think he either tied or did get or set the new record for most passing yards by a quarterback in a preseason game, as Cincinnati's defense let him throw for 353 yards and 2 touchdowns. Again, I know it's a preseason game, but goddamn, that just felt insulting. Like I was being insulted by my own team.
I mean, that's just classic Bengals for you right there. That's
Yeah.
just
It's just
if a team in the NFL is gonna lose that way, it's gonna be the Bengals. Like,
pretty much that
Yeah,
or Cleveland.
yeah,
I mean, if it makes you feel better, our Vikings got swept in the preseason, and Mike Zimmer in his coaching career has never lost 2 straight preseason games. So Vikings looked very bad the first 2 preseason games, and then they kind of got close at the end with this Chiefs game, but it was just not enough time to make a comeback. So yeah,
right. You know what? Zimmer's already done something he's never done in his career as a Vikings coach. You know what that means? We're winning the Super Bowl. He's never done that either.
exactly.
Boom. Checks out, guys.
You know, if you do fire Zimmer because you're not satisfied with what he's been giving you the past 7 years, I'll definitely take him back because he was a D coordinator in Cincinnati before he went to Minnesota. I would take him as a head coach. Sure, he's kind of just above, maybe he's about an average coach because he's gotten 2 playoff wins in 7 years. That's actually a lot worse now that I say it out loud. But, I mean, 2 playoff wins in 7 years is a hell of a lot better than 0 playoff wins in 31 years. So I'd take it.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead, Brett. Go ahead.
I was just going to add that Zimmer, it's an odd number year this year, 2021. So it's a lock that the Vikings are going to make the playoffs. It just remains to be seen how far we go in the playoffs.
Don't
So
jinx it now. Don't jinx yourself.
I
know
hope
you want
I
to be
don't jinx it.
confident, but don't jinx yourself now because I've done that before.
Yeah, when it comes to Zimmer, I'd call him slightly above average. I think he's too old-fashioned. He's too focused on the run in a passing league. So, I mean, he's a decent coach, but
Hey,
Yeah,
he's a
for
hell of a
sure.
lot better than Zac Taylor. Fucking
I'm not
2
completely
seasons.
done with Zac Taylor yet.
But then you look at his surface numbers. His record in 2 seasons is 6-25-1. 6 wins in 2 goddamn seasons.
Yeah, and at this point, like, he has the talent on offense, so we better see at least a few more wins.
Honestly, at this point, I think if they miss the playoffs this year, which they probably will, his ass is gone. I don't want anything to do with him. I don't think he even had the resume to become a head coach, but because Mike Brown is a cheap fuck, he just chased a trend, or was trying to chase trends, and hired a guy because he had coached at Cincinnati University. Because Zac Taylor was not even a coordinator when he got hired. He was like the quarterback's coach for the Rams. So he coached Jared Goff. What a resume.
Yep.
Jared Goff made the Pro Bowl 1 year. Don't you know that,
Oh,
Tommy?
wow. You know who else made the Pro Bowl 1 year? Mitchell Trubisky. You know who else made the Pro Bowl once?
Andy Dalton. right?
Mark Sanchez.
Hey, Jared Goff was a Super Bowl starting quarterback. That Rams team, you got that going.
Don't even
Maybe
start. Don't even start. You know who else was a Super Bowl starting quarterback?
Joe Flacco.
who else?
Rex Grossman.
Yeah, pretty good company, I
You know
would
who
say.
else was a Super Bowl winning quarterback, I should add? Trent Dilfer. You even
Yeah,
know who
got
Trent Dilfer is?
Never.
Yeah,
You know who's a Super Bowl starting quarterback? Kerry Collins.
yeah. It's an
So-
impressive list. So
I don't think that means that much if you started in
the
the
game.
Super Bowl. I mean, sure, it means you weren't complete dog shit, but it doesn't mean that you weren't carried by your defense or your supporting cast.
yeah, like you said, chasing a trend with Zac Taylor coming from McVay's coaching tree, the new hotshot coach in the league. You know, I don't know if there's anyone else who's taken a chance on any other Rams coordinators or coaches besides Zac Taylor. I think he might be the only McVay head
The
coach.
Chargers, actually. The Chargers coach now was the Rams defensive coordinator the last year or two.
Oh, okay. So
Brandon Staley, I think is his name. That's the Chargers coach now.
yeah.
But yeah. No, I'm sure if they do actually fire Zac Taylor, they're just gonna chase trends again and hire fucking Bill Belichick special teams coach. Who I want them to take after they fire Taylor, because I'm almost guaranteed that's going to happen now, is Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator from the Chiefs.
Yeah, I was about to mention that actually, yeah, because his name has been brought up for the past few years since the Chiefs have been playing so well, obviously, and that Andy Reid coaching tree is a pretty nice tree of coaches. You got Doug Peterson, Matt Nagy at least looked good in his first few years as a head coach, but he's kind of fallen apart. But yeah, I think Bieniemy would be a great head coach.
Something I want to do is list off our predictions for each individual NFL division. So why don't we start with the NFC East? Jay, what is your take on the NFC East?
NFC East. Obviously, this is a poor division. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I mean, it's just not good. I think we all know this. Pretty much everybody is going to be predicting the Cowboys. That's going to be pretty much everybody in America's pick, I think, because they got Dak back. They're America's team. Look at that offense.
Doesn't matter that their defense is basically a high school team or high school squad.
Their defense is atrocious. They're not going to be able to stop anybody. Dak Prescott's a question mark coming off of the injury. The Cowboys are way overhyped, and they are every single year. So I'm going with the Washington football team. Personally, one of my favorite teams in the NFL, probably solely because of their name. I really hope they keep it, by the way. But besides my own bias towards them, they're a really good team. They just got Curtis Samuel. They've got a stud of a tight end in Logan Thomas, and he's really under the radar. Not a lot of people know him, but I think he's going to get noticed a lot more this upcoming year. Really good playmaker. They've got a solid pair of running backs. They just got Ryan Fitzpatrick. So I think they're going to have a solid offense. And then also their defense was one of the best in the league last year. And I don't see any reason why they wouldn't continue that, especially with Chase Young being one more year developed. And so I think they're the strongest team in the division, and they will come out on top.
All right. Brett, what's your take on the NFC North?
The NFC North. Well, that's obviously the division that has me and Jay's favorite team, our Minnesota Vikings. And I'll try not to let my own bias get in the way. But as I alluded earlier, it's odd number years. So the Vikings, I think, are going to be a lock with Zimmer making the playoffs. So they got obviously Kirk Cousins. They got one of the best receiving cores in the league, at least with their top two receivers in Thielen, Jefferson, and obviously one of the best running backs in the league with Dalvin Cook. They had some injuries last year on defense that really hurt them. They were one of the worst defenses in the league last year, but hopefully they can bounce back. They made some free agent additions that should help them out. So I think the Vikings will maybe by a game or two just eke out and get first place above the Packers in the NFC North. And then the Bears and the Lions, I still think they're just not quite there. They're below average still
Why
at
you
this
guys?
point.
I know you guys don't like the Bears, but I honestly feel like they have playoff potential this year, and not just because there was an extra seed. I think I'm sorry for interrupting,
No, you're fine.
but I swear I feel like the Bears have potential to be a playoff team this year, just because Justin Fields looks good, and if their defense can get back to its like 2018, 2019 level, then I don't see what would get in their way.
Yeah, for sure. The Bears still are going to be a very a decent team at least. Their defense with obviously Khalil Mack, one of the best edge rushers in the league. He's not slowing down at all. But yeah, the question mark is their quarterback. Right now, it's going to be Andy Dalton. But if Justin Fields can step up at some point in the year, maybe the Bears can be a threat for that final wild card team. But it'll be tough with some of these other NFC teams. And then I guess as far as the Lions go, they got a new head coach and Dan Campbell. Traded Matt Stafford for some picks and got back Jared Goff. So they're kind of just rebuilding. I don't expect anything crazy from the Lions this year, but they got some nice young players to build a foundation around. But yeah, I think it's going to be between the Vikings and Packers, and I think the Vikings just eke out and win the division for sure.
I am going to give you my take on the AFC South, which might be one of the more clear-cut ones, and that's because I think Tampa Bay is going to win the division, no doubt. I don't even think that any of the other three teams are going to make the postseason, just because the Saints might have won the NFC South last year, but I know Drew Brees was more of a liability, becoming more of a liability than he was a weapon, but I just don't feel confident enough in saying that the Saints are going to make the playoffs with Jameis Winston
Famous Jameis.
Tim Tebow 2.0 Taysom Hill.
Taysom Hill, yeah.
I just don't feel confident that that's going to be enough to get them to the postseason, especially considering there's other better teams. The Falcons
for
have
sure.
a long way to go, I think. They have a long way to go. They're most certainly a rebuilding team. I think they're probably going to be the worst in that division again. And the Panthers, although I think they're on the right track, they're still going to be rebuilding this year. They're going to have more wins than last year, for sure, I think. Because I think Matt Rule is a good coach. They might have only won 5 games last year, but most of those games were very close. And I kind of want to see Sam Darnold redemption arc. But the Panthers are still going to be a sub 500 definitely not a playoff team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to add on to that, I don't know. I kind of disagree about the Falcons. I know they're on paper overall don't look that great of a pick to make the playoffs, but when you still have Matt Ryan, even though he's getting up there in age, they got Calvin Ridley, they got Kyle Pitts, the big tight end prospect out of Florida. I don't know. I think they're still going to try to be competitive. That defense is still pretty bad, and the Falcons notoriously blew a lot of late game leads last year, having crazy winning percentages just drop like through the floor in the fourth quarter. But I don't know. They could try to be somewhat competitive, but you're probably right that they'll be bad, but maybe not as bad as you think. So
Yeah, with the Falcons, what I think will probably happen is they'll suck for most of the year, except they'll have like a 6-game winning streak just out of the blue. I feel like that's something
6,
they've
huh?
done
I mean,
somewhere
maybe
around there.
4, but 6. Damn, 6 wins in a row.
I think
Goddamn.
they did that last
yeah,
year, didn't they? It was either last year or the year
No.
before.
Well, the year before they started out 1-7 in their first 8 games, and they finished 7-9. So they won 6 games, but they still went 6-2. They didn't go 6-0.
I mean, I guess what I'm
yeah,
trying to say is they're a very hot and cold team. I
I
think they'll
get
have,
that.
yeah, they'll probably have a really long cold stretch and a bit of a hot stretch at some point. So,
yeah. I
Oh,
um I I think with like the Panthers as well, Sam Darnold, he's just been cursed to have Adam Gase as his coach when he was in New York, and that's never a good situation for any quarterback, the so-called quarterback whisperer, Adam Gase. But now with a new scenery in Carolina, hopefully he can show that he is a top level playing quarterback. Um, and then the Panthers have a lot of nice young pieces on defense. They're pretty overall solid on offense. They obviously got Christian McCaffrey, who's you could argue is the top running back in the league. Um, and then yeah, with the Saints, yeah, I don't see them being a playoff team this year with famous Jameis or Taysom Hill at quarterback. So yeah,
famous Jameis and his absolutely tasty turnovers.
making up some turnovers.
it was
Delicious.
what 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions, right, last
Yep.
year?
Or
Yeah.
2019, he had 33 touchdowns and 30 interceptions.
Eat a
I don't
W.
ever remember seeing, in my lifetime, seeing a quarterback throw that many interceptions in a season. I thought 20 was bad. 20 is usually pretty bad. When a quarterback throws
Yeah.
20 picks in a season, that's usually pretty bad. 30 is like, well, Bruce Arians must just be a masochist.
Don't forget though, he's putting up numbers. Like if you look at his stats,
You look at my numbers, I'm balling. I just gotta stop giving the ball to the other team.
I wonder how many W's he's going to be eating this season.
He'll be too
Man.
busy baking up turnovers for the defense.
I think what his last interception he threw in the game, I think was a pick six
Yep.
interception that like ended the
His
game.
last play with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was a pick 6 in overtime, and that was his 30th interception.
How fitting.
It was so poetic.
It's yeah, very poetic ending to his Tampa Bay tenure.
Oh, he was the starter there for like 4 years, right?
Yeah, 2015, 16, 17, 18, 9, 5 actually.
Oh my
I remember
gosh.
in 2018 was the year they kept flip-flopping between him and Ryan Fitzpatrick. Like literally whenever one of them started sucking, they would just immediately switch to the other one. It was kind of funny because it's really dysfunctional if you have to do that. Jameis Winston would throw like 4 picks in the third quarter, and then they'd just tell him to sit down, and then Fitzpatrick would come in, and then Fitzpatrick would start the next game, like throw 2 or 3 picks in the first half, and then they just let Jameis suit up. You're gonna go play now.
It's like a pee-wee football team.
They also had Matt Glennon, right, for a while. Didn't they give him a big
Mike Glennon.
contract? Or Mike
That was the
Glennon, yeah.
Bears that gave him that contract, the
Oh yeah.
3-year, $15 million contract, and he didn't even start the entire season. And that was after they drafted then they drafted Trubisky right after doing that or having him sign that contract. So I guess the
Yeah.
Bears just like wasting money. Okay, so I want like all of our takes on the NFC West. I want to see what you guys think on NFC West team, or who's going to win the NFC West. Jay, why don't you start?
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, personally, it's a really interesting division, and to me, it's like the polar opposite of the NFC East. Like, it's just
Where
all
every
really
team is
solid
bad
teams.
in the East and every team is good in the West.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's pretty poetic right there. East West, just a flip-flop. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm high on all of the teams. I think the weakest is probably the Niners, is what I would say. But they could surprise me. Who knows? They did when they made the Super Bowl that one year, so they could definitely
Yeah.
surprise me. I think the Seahawks are probably the strongest, and so I'm gonna go with them as my pick. I don't like to bet against guys like Russell Wilson. He's obviously a superstar quarterback and a seasoned vet, and he's got good talent around him. They have a subpar defense, which is an issue. So that could certainly take them down a
Subpar.
notch.
That's being polite. At
Yeah,
least
you're right.
at the beginning of the season last year, they were the Legion of Boom, and then they turned into the Legion of Room.
Yeah, no kidding. So yeah, I think because of that, they probably won't. They might not even get past the first round, but I think they'll win the division. I think they're a good regular season team. So yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, all all the teams in the NFC West are certainly playoff contending level teams. That's why we kind of talked about it in the NFC North with Thomas mentioning that the Bears maybe could be a playoff team, but with that extra seed, wild card seed. But all these teams in the West, I could see potentially, three teams from this division maybe getting into the playoffs with the Seahawks. I think I agree with Jay that they'll win the division with just Russell Wilson. I know that O-line is still pretty shaky. It has been the past few years, but Russell's been able to make it work. They still got some huge players on defense, even though overall they're not a great unit with Bobby Wagner, Jamal Adams. But yeah, up and down the list of these teams, Cardinals, they got Kyler. He's a young up and coming quarterback. They made some additions this offseason, like J.J. Watt, who's kind of getting up there in age, but who knows, maybe that defense can kind of turn it around in Arizona. LA, trading for Matt Stafford, that's certainly a big upgrade, in my opinion, over Jared Goff. And I think McVay and his offense can work wonders with Stafford, really show his true potential. And then the Niners, they still got a great defense. They got a lot of guys coming back from injury, but the only question mark really is that quarterback position, and we don't know how long Garoppolo could start. We could see Trey Lance at some point in the year, but they got the weapons on offense as well to compete. But I like I said, I think the Seahawks still come away and win the division.
So I'm gonna go against the safe pick here. I actually think the Rams are going to win the division. Well, the Rams or the Cardinals, actually. Because I usually don't like taking the safe pick because when a lot of the time when people make preseason predictions like we're doing now, the safe pick a lot of the time ends up falling to complete shit. Now, I don't think the Seahawks are going to do that, but at this point, it's just kind of getting old with Seattle. Like, even they weren't the division winner the last 2 years, or 3 years actually, but it's just kind of getting old with them because they're constantly a playoff team, and Maybe it's just because I want to see a new team win that division. I mean, I don't know how I can say that considering the 49ers won it in 2019 and the Rams won it in 2018. But I'm just kind of getting tired of the Seahawks being in the playoffs in general. But anyway, the reason I think the Rams have a good chance is because obviously they have an upgrade at quarterback. Might not be the best upgrade at quarterback, but it's still something. They did lose their superstar running back Cam Akers, but they did replace him with Sony Michel. I don't know if you guys saw that because that was just a recent trade. And I think Sony
Yeah.
Michel is a pretty solid running back, so I think he could certainly take over for Cam Akers, at least for this year.
Yeah.
Certainly.
And so, sorry, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about Matt Stafford quick. Yeah, I've always really liked him. I've seen a lot of him with him being in the NFC North, and I just don't think he ever had a chance to properly shine. And
No,
I think we're gonna-
not in that shithole Detroit.
Not in
exactly.
Detroit. Yeah.
I think he's a solid quarterback and a good upgrade over Goff, and so I can see where you're coming from with this pick.
That and their defense is one of the top defenses in the league. It has been for the past few years. It just they have almost everything you could want. I mean, I shouldn't be that optimistic because we don't know how Stafford is going to do. Maybe it was completely Detroit's fault, but I feel like some of the blame does need to go on to him because he's not really good against winning teams, and he hasn't won a playoff game either. Now,
Yeah.
the reason I think the Cardinals, I more or less just want to see the Cardinals win that division because the Cardinals, sometimes I'm a sucker for good free agent signings. And although AJ Green and JJ Watt are both older than shit, it just is. I'm like, damn, those are such good signings that I really want to see if the Cardinals can take that next step this year because they were only one win away from making the playoffs last year. Now, they didn't really seem ready for it, but I think we can all agree on the fact that they would have been a better team to be in the playoffs than the Bears. My oh
Absolutely.
my, did the Bears were just
Yeah.
nothing more than an embarrassment against the Saints in that
Yeah.
wild card game last
They
year.
certainly didn't belong in the playoffs last year. So yeah.
But
Yeah, I would have liked to see the Vikings against the Saints, the Saint Slayers, the Vikings.
goddamn,
Yeah.
put your bias aside, damn it. They were already out. They were out before the last week of the season.
Hey, am I wrong though that they're the Saint Slayers? I mean,
Except for when it really mattered, or when it mattered the most.
Yeah, but that was Bounty Gate, and that was
Okay, yeah,
bullshit
I
pass
don't agree with
interference.
I don't agree with the Bounty Gate part. I think the Saints should have, and rightfully so, got punished for that. But
For sure.
unless all those hits he took messed up his brain function, that isn't that Bounty Gate is not the reason Brett Favre thought it was a good idea to throw back across his body into double coverage when they were already in field goal range. Not to mention whoever their offensive coordinator was thinking it was a good idea to pass when you were already in field goal range.
you know what else sucked? I'm pretty sure Adrian Peterson just threw the game. He had like
Because he
5
fumbled like
fumbles.
2 or 3 times,
Yeah,
Yeah.
he had some big fumbles. Yeah.
and they were in Saints territory. I think at least 2 of them were in Saints territory, so that was guaranteed points taken off the board. Now that we've got the NFC wrapped up, let's head over to the AFC. Jay, what is your take on the AFC South?
Yeah, so I think personally this one is, in my eyes, pretty clear cut. I think the Titans are taking this fairly easily with little resistance. Their offense is just looking lethal. I mean, they've got, in my opinion, the best running back in the league in Derrick Henry. That's a controversial take, I know, but there's no denying how good he is. He's just the engine behind the whole offense. Rushing champion last year. Yeah, the dude's just a beast. There's no denying it. You've got Ryan Tannehill. He He had a Pro Bowl season last year. He's probably a top 12 quarterback in my eyes. And then you've got superstar wide receiver A.J. Brown and then Julio Jones. It's going to be tough to stop them on offense. Their defense could definitely use some work, and there is that, but I don't see who's going to beat them. Like who's beating the Titans in that division? The Colts?
The
Nah,
Colts
probably.
maybe, but
Yeah,
even then,
uh,
Carson Wentz, even when he is healthy, is still could go either way. So we just don't know enough about the Colts, and obviously the Jaguars or Texans are not anywhere near their level.
yeah, I don't know. The Colts defense, a very strong and impressive defense that they have. I don't know, yeah, but the big question is quarterback. Obviously, last year they had Phillip Rivers and made the playoffs last year with him, almost beating the Bills in the playoffs last year. But yeah, and then the Texans and Jaguars are not even a factor, especially if Deshaun Watson's not even going to play this year for the Texans, and then the Jaguars are obviously rebuilding. So yeah, it's probably a clear-cut division winner for the Titans. Yeah.
Brett, what is your take on the AFC East?
So the AFC East, it's last year finally the Patriots didn't win that division that they've had a stranglehold on for many years. But it was the Bills that finally came through. They have a young and up-and-coming team. Josh Allen has really evolved into a star-level quarterback. That defense is also very solid. I would say they would be my favorites to win it this year. But an interesting note about that division, all the quarterbacks, after the cut yesterday of Cam Newton by the Patriots, they all have starting quarterbacks that are 25 and under, with Josh Allen, Tua, Mac Jones, and Zach Wilson. So I think the Dolphins, they showed that they can be a playoff contending team last year, especially with their defense and Brian Flores being a Bill Belichick coaching hire that actually worked out. But yeah, and then the Patriots with Mac Jones at quarterback, I don't know. I as a rookie, he's going to struggle. The Patriots made a lot of free agents additions this year. They spent the most money in free agency, but I think it would just lead them to being an average team, maybe like a 9-8 team or 8-9 record. And then the Jets, I think, are getting in the right direction. I do like Zach Wilson, but I think they're still rebuilding, so they'll probably be a pretty bad team this year. But I would say the Bills win that division.
So, again, very convenient that I keep getting the more clear-cut divisions. I guess I'm just lucky. Anyway, I think it's pretty clear that the Chiefs are probably going to win the AFC West again.
Probably.
Although I think they are going to for sure be the division champions, I think that the other three teams in the AFC West are still interesting and could be playoff contenders. Now, the Broncos are probably the furthest from this. They're probably looking like they're going to be the weakest team in the division again. And, Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock both played well this past preseason, and maybe Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater have a bounce back year. But even then, considering their division is just so tight, I can't see. They would have to beat the Chiefs at least once for me to take them seriously. Now the Raiders, it's really hard to get a gauge on the Raiders. I want to say they're a playoff team, but I'm sure a lot of people said that last year. Considering the past 2 years, they had winning records in the middle of the season, and then they just completely collapsed. 2019, they were 6-4, and then they finished 7-9. Last year, they were 6-3, and they finished 8-8. So I don't know what it is, if it's John Gruden or what, but they just can't seem to finish a season with shit. And I'm sure it doesn't help that their defense is one of the worst in the league. At least that's what I've seen. I don't know. The Raiders, I want to say, are a playoff team because they have a really talented offense. Derek Carr looked. Josh Jacobs is a decent running back, and they've got talented receivers and tight ends. It really depends on if John Gruden can ever fix that defense. Now, the Chargers, I think, are going to be a playoff team. Kind of like, I know they were 7-9 last year and looked very dysfunctional at times, like when they got blown out at home or losing 45-0 at home to the Cam Newton-led Patriots. But kind of like Josh Allen in his rookie year to his second year, where Josh Allen and the Bills went 5-11 his rookie year, but then they went 10-6 and were in the playoffs next year. I kind of think we're going to see something similar with Justin Herbert and the Chargers. Now, I'm not sure, they probably won't win a playoff game, but I almost certainly think that they're going to be a wild card this year.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really high on the Chargers. Another note about them, they lost a lot of games that were within like one score right at the end of the game. So they were better than their record indicated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chargers and both Chargers and Falcons, they both had a lot of just humiliating losses that were very, very close games at the end. But yeah, I agree. I think the Chargers, Herbert's second year, but with a new head coach, it might be a little tricky and growing pains there, obviously. But I think they can be a contender for a wild card spot. But a playoff game, winning a playoff game, might be too much to ask for. But they're certainly on the right track to get in there. So,
what do we think as a group of the AFC North? I think this is probably the most interesting division in the AFC. So, with that being said, Brett, what is your take on the Pittsburgh Steelers?
So the Pittsburgh Steelers last year started off amazing. Obviously, they went 11-0, and then they had that kind of wake-up game against the Washington football team, where that young and upcoming defense just stopped them and gave them their first loss. And they got really cocky. They thought they could be a good team, and then they get humiliated by the Browns in the wild card game last year on the very first play.
Let me just say, as a Bengals fan, that was absolutely fan-fucking-tastic. I absolutely love that game.
Very first snap of the game goes into the end zone and is recovered for a fumble for a touchdown by the Browns. So that was it was great.
Yeah, I gotta just add, it was satisfying for everybody to see the freaking Steelers get embarrassed. I mean,
especially
just
by the Browns.
All
considering
season.
They constantly talk shit or act like the Browns are their bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They did that.
Yeah.
And then all season, Chase Claypool and Juju Smith-Schuster making TikToks on the opposing team's logo. Just every game. It was just so satisfying. So satisfying.
Fantastic.
Yeah, Mike Tomlin certainly deserves some criticism for maybe not being able to control that locker room. He's had a lot of drama queens come through. Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, probably the biggest names for sure. And then Big Ben himself, mulling retirement, not taking responsibility. He should have retired years ago, but he's still kicking. So, but as far as what they can do this upcoming year, I do like their first round draft pick, Najee Harris, that running back out of Alabama.
See, I'm gonna stop you there for a second. I like the pick. I like him as a player, Najee Harris. I don't think there's anything wrong with him, but that is not what the Steelers needed. That was not their first need.
No, you're right.
I guess it's nice to have a running back, but is it any good if you don't have anybody blocking for him? The Steelers were last when it came to rushing yards last year. They were the worst rushing team in the league, and that was because they basically had no run blocking.
Yeah.
What
And
is it with teams? They just don't like to prioritize offensive line.
I don't know if they feel like they can get away with cheaper and then it blows up in their face, but because it's the
Yeah.
Steelers, I'm going to say keep going because I want them to keep sucking.
Yeah, obviously big holes on the O-line. They've lost some long-time players there over this past season or 2 seasons. They've lost some key players on the O-line. But they do have a pretty solid defense still. They were one of the better defenses in the league last year. They got some nice young superstars like TJ Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick on the defense. So they got still a nice foundation there. But I don't know, this season and Big Ben getting up there to like 39, almost 40 years old, it's all going to be on him if he can drag this team to the playoffs. And this division is not an easy one. So I think they might struggle. They might be a contender for the wild card spot, but I think the Steelers struggle to make the playoffs this season.
So I don't want any bias. I'm going to have Jay cover the Bengals because I don't want any bias in their analysis.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start with the good because I do have some good things to say about the Bengals. First of all, I think Joe Burrow's a future superstar in the NFL as long as they don't ruin him by allowing him to get injured again, which could certainly happen because they once again did not address their O-line. But I'll get to that later. Let me keep talking about the good. I think they have a very underrated wide receiver room. I'm really high on Tyler Boyd. He's a really good slot receiver, and I think a lot of people sleep on him. So yeah, really solid weapon for Burrow, and then obviously T. Higgins coming off of a really solid rookie campaign, and I think Jamar Chase will probably get better. It's probably just a case of, you know, uh, he's probably just had some nerves in the preseason as a rookie. I think he'll start to gel more with Joe Burrow because they do have that chemistry from college. So, yeah, they've got a really good wide receiver room, and I think they've got the potential to be a really solid offense. Now, to move on to the bad, like I said, they refuse to address their O-line, which I have been.
12-year veteran, that'll fix the entire fucking line.
Yeah,
And then a second round reach who's so fucking shit that he can't even make the second team O-line. Sorry, continue.
it's really unbelievable to me. I don't understand what their logic is, and like I'm not nearly as passionate about it as Thomas is because I'm not a Bengals fan, but it baffles me that their young franchise quarterback got as badly hurt as he did, and they still did not do anything about it. I don't
They're like
understand.
an ostrich with their head in the sand. They just don't want to hear it. They just don't want to hear that they need an O-line
Yeah,
because
that's what it
Yeah.
is.
I don't know.
But that Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, LSU connection, though, that's too good to pass up. So
What does it mean? It doesn't mean anything if the fucking receiver doesn't have time. This receiver can't get time to get separation if the quarterback's already running for his goddamn life.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's what I'll say. In terms of their defense, they've made moves to improve it throughout the past few seasons, but it's still not
A
quite
lot
there.
of question marks.
Yeah, exactly. And so
Yeah,
what I'll
for sure.
say about the Bengals is that they have the makings of a good offense. Um, they need to improve their offensive line and keep working on their defense. And I think within maybe 5 years or so, they could be a solid team with Joe Burrow. But right now,
Ooh,
a little lower
5 years.
Yeah,
Hear
5
that,
years.
Thomas? In 5 years, they
Yeah,
might be a good
5 more
team.
years, we might get close to making, or we might be a wild card team just so we can get our asses kicked and exit in the first round again. And then another 5 years.
Yep.
even though I didn't cover the Bengals, I still have a little bit of bias. I don't think the Ravens are honestly that good. I really don't. I think Lamar Jackson is overrated. I think they will be a playoff team this year, but I do not think that they're going to win the division. I think that if anything, they'll be a wild card again. It's just that Lamar Jackson, the problem is he strikes me as a run first, throw second, and that no quarterback to
Oh,
me.
for sure.
That to me, that's not playing quarterback. It's always throw first and then scramble second. But to me, there's already a clear-cut formula on shutting down Lamar Jackson and essentially the entire Ravens offense. If you just zone in on the run, and if you can completely stop their run game and force him to pass, then you're basically going to win, because Lamar Jackson cannot win a game by just throwing. At least he hasn't that I've seen. Every
Yeah.
time they've
No.
won, they kind of just they get out in front by running the ball first, and then once they're relaxed, they have a comfortable lead and want to just add to it, then they start throwing. But I just don't get the hype with that team or Lamar Jackson. I just don't think they're that great. Again, I think they're going to be a playoff team again this year, but I just don't think they're going to win the division.
Yeah, and when it comes to Lamar and his passing, there's not even the excuse that he doesn't have weapons. He does. He has they gave him Hollywood Brown, the really good deep threat. He hasn't been properly utilized because Lamar can't throw the ball downfield. And he has Mark Andrews, one of the most talented tight ends in the game, who didn't have a great statistical year last year, and guess what? Probably because of Lamar Jackson. That's my take on it.
Yeah, that in that playoff win they had last year against Tennessee, Lamar,
He did
as you
not have a
alluded
good
to,
game passing.
passing, yeah, he had more rushing yards than passing yards.
Damn.
Or well, he nearly did, but he was obviously more effective in the rushing game. And as I'm looking at the stats now, he took 5 sacks as well in that game. So.
And the Bills like completely exposed their offense. I mean,
Yeah.
completely exposed, because the Bills' defense isn't even that great. I would say it's more a middle-of-the-pack defense. It's not terrible, but not great. But
Yeah.
they had the perfect game plan for stopping their offense. They completely shut down the Ravens' ability to run, and it showed, because the Ravens only scored 3 points that whole game. They kept forcing him to pass, and basically what ended it was when he threw that pick six, if you remember that Bills-Ravens game. That basically put the nail in the coffin. They could not move the ball worth shit that game, because the Bills knew exactly how to stop that Lamar Jackson offense.
Yeah, and just 2 years ago, Lamar was the MVP. Just obviously he was lighting it up in the regular season, but it just in the playoffs, you're right, he hasn't shown that he can win games with his arm, forcing the ball when he needs to, making the proper read. He's got to be a scramble first quarterback, and that could be to his detriment, because it's pretty easy for teams to figure out what the Ravens are going to do.
For our last team tonight, I think we should all have some input on the Cleveland Browns. I think this is going to be one of the most interesting teams of this season, but I'll have you guys go first.
All right. Yeah, Cleveland, they finally broke through last year. They made the playoffs again, and they won a playoff game. They, like I alluded earlier, talking about the Steelers, they just absolutely humiliated the Steelers in that wild card game. The Steelers, I guess, to be fair, they did put up some garbage time points that made it look closer, but the Browns won 47 to 37 or something like that. So, and one of my favorite things about that Browns team, Kevin Stefanski, the head coach, rookie head coach, former longtime Vikings assistant. I'm happy that he was able to turn this team around. And Baker's been he's had struggled his first few years in the league, kind of getting his footing. But he showed that he can be a competent Pro Bowl star level quarterback in this league. He has some good weapons with OBJ and Jarvis Landry and Njoku at tight end. They got a great dual threat running back group with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And their O-line is probably regarded one of the best O-lines in the league. So yeah, and then on defense, they got some nice weapons there. Obviously, Myles Garrett is the big name. And I think this year that's only going to get better. They almost, after beating the Steelers, they almost beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs at Arrowhead. Even though Mahomes got injured for most of the second half of that divisional game, but still, they nearly made it to the championship game last year. And I think this year they're probably my favorite for the AFC. I don't know. I think a Chiefs Browns AFC Championship game could be certainly possible this year. But yeah, I think they're a very good team, and they should certainly make a deep playoff run.
Yeah, I don't really have much more to add, honestly. It's Kevin Stefanski. I'm super happy for him coming from the Vikings over to pretty much just flipping that whole Cleveland organization around. They kind of had a
Yeah.
aura of losing. I don't know if that's the correct word, but I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. And when he came over there, it just like the whole culture of the team just seemed to switch, and he Baker Mayfield was looking like he was declining already, and he had a really good season last year. So I attribute that to Stefanski heading over as well. And I think Mayfield will only go up from here too. So yeah, that's really all I have to say. But I think Brett summed it up really well.
I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I think, well, I basically am, but I think the Browns, next to the Buccaneers, are the most complete team in the NFL. Because you look at this, not only did they have a pretty good roster last year, but I think it's only gotten better this year. Yes, they did lose on the D-line. They lost Sheldon Richardson, and I can't remember his first name. Probably going to butcher his last name. Ogunjobi, I think that's his name.
Yeah.
But they did add Jadeveon Clowney. And although Jadeveon Clowney's a little bit past his prime, I still think he could probably do some damage to opposing teams' quarterbacks. And to me, Myles Garrett, next to Aaron Donald, is the best nose tackle. The best nose tackle in the league. The secondary wasn't that notable last year. It wasn't terrible. I think Denzel Ward, personally, is a pretty good corner. And they did, I think in this past year, well, they got, was it Troy Hill from the Rams, who was another solid corner. And they added to the secondary in the draft, too. Didn't they draft a linebacker also? I can't.
Yeah. First round they got a cornerback that I'm not too familiar with, but second round they had a linebacker that I think a lot of people said fell to them. Jeremiah Owusu Koromoa or whatever, JOK or JKO is what they call him. So.
That, and they've got one of my favorite linebackers in the league, Sion Takitaki. I mainly like him just because he has like the best last name in the world.
Clinton Dix.
That's pretty good too, but he was a corner or a safety.
True.
Takitaki's a linebacker. Anyway, and then obviously you have their offense. Baker Mayfield, although kind of looked more like a game manager last year, still looked massively improved from when he was under that dumbass Freddie Kitchens. Mr. Run a draw play from shotgun on 4th and 9. I think their running game is more prevalent or is more dangerous than their passing game because they got the 1-2 punch with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And obviously with the receivers, they got Odell Beckham Jr., who, although I think is a little overrated, is still a pretty good wide receiver. Jarvis Landry, who's kind of getting up there in age, but it's a pretty good number 2 wide receiver. And then you got Austin Hooper and David Njoku at tight end. So I think, like I said, next to the Buccaneers, this is probably the most complete team in the league. I can see them going as far as 13-4, a 13-win season with them. 13 or 12 wins. I want to say 13 wins, but 12 is. I'm gonna go with 13-4. 13-4. Probably blow up in my face, but I want to say the Browns are gonna go 13-4 this year, and hopefully they win I want them to win the division. I think they will. So that stadium in Cleveland will host its first ever playoff game.
That seems fair.
Yeah, I think I obviously talked about it a little bit at length, but yeah, I think they're certainly one of the favorites to be one of the top seed, compete for the top seed in the AFC. I would love to see a Browns Chiefs championship game. I think that'd be a great rematch from last year. So
we should probably mention that. So a friend of ours who's not a part of this podcast is a diehard Browns fan. Obviously, you two have made it very well known that you're Vikings fans. We will actually be attending the Browns at Vikings Week 4 matchup. And I think it's going to be a great game because I believe that will be a matchup between 2 playoff teams. Although I don't think the Vikings will win the NFC North, I do think they'll be a wild card, so we'll have a match between 2 playoff teams. At least that's what I think.
Yeah, and I think we'll try to do some sort of vlog or something.
Definitely.
Yeah, that'd be fun. But yeah, I'm very excited for that. It'd be my first game at US Bank Stadium. That crowd, I can't wait to be a part of like the skull chant.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you guys do the skull chant, and me and Sean will do the dog pound chant.
I think, but yeah, Stefanski coming back to Minnesota to play his former team, he probably would like to get some revenge against the Vikings. So I think it'll be a fun game, hopefully a close game, and obviously I'm gonna let my bias get in the way, but I hope the Vikings can win that game. But yeah,
I should have mentioned earlier. This is how this is going to work. This is just our preseason recap, basically, and preview towards the season. How we're going to do this is we're going to do an episode after every week of football, so we can recap every game in some way. So this video is going to be a little different from the others. It's probably going to be a lot longer than our normal videos, just because we're kind of getting used to this. But mainly we're going to do a video each week after every week of football. So after this episode, the next episode will not be until sometime after week 1. Hopefully Wednesday or Thursday of the following week. But with that being said, I think that we covered everything that we wanted to cover, and that we're just about done. Have you guys got anything more to add?
I'm good.
No, I think I'm good. Yeah, I think we touched base with everything. So
then we will see you guys next time on the next episode of JTB Sports. And boy, is it going to be great because we're going to get to dissect the Bengals versus Vikings matchup.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you guys next time.